Welcome, everyone. My name is David Messenger. I'm the chair of the Department of History at the University of South Alabama and also a member of the High School Essay Contest Committee operated by the Mobile County Remembrance Commission and the Equal Justice Initiative. Welcome to the conclusion of our high school essay contest and our award ceremony. Before we get underway with the ceremony, I want to thank a large number of people who've helped us put this event together and carry it out and bring us here today for this celebration of our winners and the students and teachers who worked so hard on these projects. First, I'd like to thank the leader of the Mobile County Remembrance Commission, County Commissioner Merceria Ludgood, for her leadership and helping us get this event together. The members of our essay contest subcommittee, which include, along with myself, my co-chair, Gigi Armbrecht, which also includes Diane Garden, Brenda Beverly, Anitra Henderson, Lori Shorter, and Mary Mullins Reddit, who effectively ran the committee instead of the co-chairs, which was quite appropriate. Thank you all for your work. Our broad coalition. I'd also like to thank our intern, Tori Sanders from University of South Alabama, who assisted us very much at different parts of this planning process. I'd like to thank the Mobile County Public School Board and the school board members for their support, as well as the school boards in Saraland, Chickasaw, and Satsuma for encouraging their students to participate and giving us support. That includes members of the school board who are here, Sherry McDade and Dawn Stringfell. It includes Aaron Milner, who's here from Saraland. Thank you for your support. It also includes staff people here, Lakeisha Brackens from Mobile County School Board, Nate Smith, the coordinator for Social Studies and History, Kevin Bayless, coordinator for Language Arts. Without their assistance, this contest wouldn't have taken place. Of course, the support of the school board superintendent, Creswell Thedgill, and the communications director, Rena Phillips, for all their support through the process, and especially for allowing us to be here for today's ceremony. Also, Carolyn Akers from ACEL and the Mobile Area Education Foundation have been very supportive of us today. I'd like to thank our judges who judged the essays that were awarded these prizes that we're going to be giving out today. Marcy Hines from Baker High School and Kern Jackson from University of South Alabama were our local judges who worked with the staff of the Equal Justice Initiative, Elliot Spillers and Kiana West, who are here, who are going to be awarding the prizes. They not only judged, but also helped run this whole ceremony, or this whole event, this whole contest from their point of view. Finally, I'd like to thank the teachers who brought this into their classrooms and encouraged their students to work on these projects and see them to fruition. In many schools across the board, in Saraland, in Chickasaw and Satsuma, we needed all of their support to really make this work. So I'm very grateful to all the teachers who helped us out. Now I'd like to ask Eric Finley from the Dora Franklin Finley African American Heritage Trail to talk a little bit about our Mobile County Remembrance Commission, and then we'll get on to the awards. Again, thank you all for being here. We really appreciate your support of this activity. Eric.
Good morning, Superintendent Threadgill, commissioners, guests. I am pleased to be with you this morning. I am Eric Finley, and I bring you greetings from Commissioner Merceria Ludgood and the Mobile County Community Remembrance Project. Commissioner Ludgood had a conflict this morning with a meeting, and you know, we all have these tools that keep track of our Outlook and Yahoo calendars, and then we've got Google nowadays that will give us one view of all of them, but we can still only be one place at a time, okay? And but for some reason, I think that Superintendent Threadgill is probably working on a K-5 initiative for one of those special schools to come up with a hologram program so that in the future we might be able to accomplish being in more than one place at a time. But as it was said, I'm the tour coordinator for the Dora Franklin Finley African American Heritage Trail here in Mobile. And we conduct tours throughout the city. Normally those tours are about 2 hours, and I end up actually being about 15 minutes over. So when I saw the agenda this morning for 5 minutes, I choked because I get off on these sidebars all of the time. But we'll stay to the agenda. And this initiative was started by Commissioner Ludgood, and she assembled about 50 of the most diverse members of our community from a multitude of vocations and from every walk of life in this city. We started meeting about 2 years ago, and we would have monthly meetings. And of course, the pandemic surfaced, which then we had to continue on Zoom, which was new to a lot of people. But thankfully, we had Mrs. Reddick. Where did she go? She's right here. Mary, raise your hand, because Mary created the Zoom meetings, which kept us on task. And we were able to complete the prerequisites and the requirements from the Equal Justice Initiative in Montgomery to fulfill the project. And I have tagged Ms. Reddick as the Dean of Facilitators, because this was a real challenge, okay? But the 50 members ultimately convened into smaller groups, and they went out to do research and on all of the locations that individuals had been lynched in Mobile. And that information was submitted to the Equal Justice Initiative organization in Montgomery for validation and vetting, and the project was approved. And we continued to meet to establish the requirements. It's been an experience that was culminated in late January with the collection of soil from each one of these locations, and a formal memorialization took place down at Mardi Gras Park. And so here we are today, where we will acknowledge the winners of the essay contest, and the requirements have been met. We're in hopes that the community education, the soil collection, and the essay contest will provide us a path to remember the pain and of the past, to tell the truth for repairs and reconciliation in the future, okay? After all of these requirements are met, a commemorative monument in collaboration with the Equal Justice Initiative in Montgomery will be installed in Mobile as a symbolic reminder of the past racial injustices, and to remain awake for us not to repeat the terror and the violence of the past. Thank you very much.
Before we move on with the awards, Superintendent Threadgill would like to say a few words, and then he has to run to a meeting, but we appreciate him being here.
Good morning. This is a very exciting occasion, so I know we can do better than that. Good morning. Good morning. Much better, much better. I want to welcome you all to Mobile County Public Schools. I do want to apologize that I do have a meeting, so I can't be in two places at once. So as soon as I leave here, I have to get started on another meeting. But I wanted to personally come in and congratulate all of these students. And to be honest with you, it really doesn't matter what district you represent. You are all very deserving to be recognized because of your hard work and dedication, and deserving so much to when Gigi and I was, when she came and explained everything to me, because I didn't have a clue of the essay, and when she explained everything to me, I was so impressed when I heard the titles and some of the language that the students were using and the thought process behind it. I was so impressed that I have committed our school district, our school system, to continue this in-house. So I've spoken with our academic team, and we're going to continue this essay contest and the scholarship. So that's how much it impressed me. So again, I want to come in and congratulate you and to say from the bottom of my heart how proud I am of all of the hard work that you all are doing. Also, I do want to recognize Dr. Reginald Crenshaw. We failed to mention him. He's another one of our board members, the president. So again, congratulations to all of you, and I wish you well. Thank you.
Now I'd like to call on the members of the staff of the Equal Justice Initiative, Elliot Spillers and Kiana West, who will introduce the EJI and their role in the contest and talk about this contest and our award winners. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kiana. I'm a Justice Fellow at the Equal Justice Initiative. This is my colleague, Elliot Spillers. Just to give you a little bit of a background on the Equal Justice Initiative, we are a nonprofit law office and human rights organization that's based in Montgomery, Alabama. We were originally founded in 1989 when our executive director, attorney Brian Stevenson, came to Alabama to defend people on the state's death row. At the time when EJI was founded, 25% of all executions that were happening in the country were happening right here in Alabama. And it was actually just 2 years after a very important Supreme Court case called McCleskey versus Kemp. And in that Supreme Court case, the court decided that even though they were presented with evidence of racial bias in administration of the death penalty, that they would still continue the death penalty because they said that racial bias is quote unquote inevitable. So they decided that even though they agreed that there was racial bias in deciding who would get the death penalty and who wasn't, that they'd rather have a racist death penalty than have no death penalty at all. So this is part of the context in which EJI was founded. And we continue to do this work, and so we are anti-death penalty. We're committed to defending anyone on Alabama's death row. There still continues to be racial bias, including in jury selection, so there's still places where there'll be all-white juries when convicting a defendant. So we still are in the midst of this crisis today. And we've since expanded our legal work. We also are committed to challenging the excessive punishment of children. Specifically, we've done a lot of work with challenging life without parole sentences that people receive when they are children. We believe that no matter what a child has been accused of, that they are still a child regardless. And so overall, we are committed to make sure that children are treated as children within the context of the criminal legal system. We also are committed to challenging the inhumane prison conditions throughout the state of Alabama. You may already know that Alabama has among the most dangerous and violent prison conditions throughout the country, and that's not to say that prison conditions are good anywhere, because they're not, but they are particularly inhumane right here in Alabama, so much so that the Department of Justice has actually recently filed a lawsuit against the entire Alabama Department of Corrections, which isn't common. Sometimes specific facilities will go under investigation, but the Department of Justice has found that the conditions of people who are incarcerated in Alabama, it goes against their 8th Amendment right to cruel and unusual punishment. And so this is one of those current legacies of racial injustice that we're here to commemorate today. And in addition to that, we also provide reentry services for our clients, because there's also not a lot of options in Alabama for people who were previously incarcerated. It can be very hard to find a job or even a place to live, and just basic every day-to-day things if you have been incarcerated for any amount of time. And so we're also committed to providing those services to our clients. Now, in around 2008, we embarked on a broader public education journey, and that's because our attorneys realized that the types of racial bias and the economic injustice faced by their clients is reflective of a broader history of racial injustice. And we knew that if we really wanted to effectively challenge these conditions within the context of the criminal legal system, that we were going to have to do more work with the general public to make sure that people are aware of this history in order to better understand how what we're experiencing today is a continuation of that racial injustice. And so that's how the Community Remembrance Project actually started. That's part of this effort to engage more fully in addressing this history of racial injustice. So I'm going to hand it over now to Elliot to talk a little bit more about that.
Thanks, Kiana. As Kiana said, my name is Elliot Spillers, and I am a project manager at the Equal Justice Initiative. I have been at EJI for the last 3 years, and I came in as a Justice Fellow primarily to help with the opening of our museum and memorial. I'm sure many of you have heard of it, the Legacy Museum from Enslavement to Mass Incarceration, and the National Memorial for Peace and Justice. Since coming to EJI, my role has evolved and shifted, and I now work primarily with our Community Remembrance team alongside Kiana and our colleagues at EJI. As Kiana stated, after 30 years of really working as an organization to expose and challenge racial and economic bias in the criminal legal system in Alabama, we thought it was necessary and crucial to begin a conversation talking about the way that we as a society have been socialized by our history of racial and economic injustice. And so we're very intentional about our community education work. And so we have a number of reports, many of which I brought with me today that I hope you all will sit with and read about, that talks about more of the historical context that we are really intentional about talking about when we present to groups and talk about this history and our work in the justice system here in Alabama. But when we talk about our historical narrative, we are really intentional about situating this historical context around really 5 main eras. We first talk about the era of enslavement in this country, but before we address the era of enslavement, we first then have to orient ourselves to the fact that America is a post-genocidal nation. European settlers first came to this country. There was this narrative of racial difference that deemed people as different, as other, as savage, as criminal. And it was that sort of ideology that then legitimized and sustained chattel slavery here on American soil. Mobile is one of many communities across the country that has been very shaped, that its identity has been shaped by this legacy of enslavement. When you think about Africatown, when you think about just the history of black mobilization around this community. When we talk about the era of enslavement, we also are really intentional about talking about the fact that, although the 13th Amendment abolished chattel slavery, what that document and the Emancipation Proclamation did not do was actually remove this myth of black inferiority and white superiority that then you see play out throughout subsequent eras in our history. When we move from enslavement, we then talk about the era of Reconstruction in America. This was America's first opportunity to re-enfranchise black people, but there was a collective failure on our part at enfranchising black citizens in this country. And as such, we document during this time period of 1876 to 1865 to 1876, we document at least 2,000 black people were actually lynched in communities across the country, primarily in former states of the Confederacy. But we also document the lynchings happened outside of the South as well during this time period. When we talk and give presentations to people in Nebraska and New York, so many of them assume that racism is so specific to the Southern experience. But that is a very incomplete and unhonest understanding and misguided understanding of our history. And so we talk about the fact that racial violence was not just specific to the American South, but it was something that happened all throughout our country. And so when we move from this time period of Reconstruction in America, we then move into this other era known as the era of racial terror lynching. During this time period, we document that between 1877, so after Reconstruction, up until 1950, that over 4,000 black people were lynched in America, primarily again in the Deep South, but also still happening other places in the US as well. When we talk about this history, we are very intentional about talking about how during this time period, there was this presumption of guilt and dangerousness that was assigned to black people, and that really informed the way that racial bias was happening and playing out in the justice system at the time. There was this myth of black children being super predators and being deemed as criminal and inhuman. Of the 360 documented racial terror lynchings that we report to have been lynched in Alabama, at least 6 of them were lynched in Mobile County between the time period of 1877 and 1950. We talk about in our work, in our memorialization efforts, the value of elevating the names of these individuals, because without honest truth-telling, we are unable to reckon with our history and reckon with this truth that then moves us to the necessary process of repair, the necessary process of forgiveness and healing. We can't get to those other parts until we as a collective society are able to reckon and get proximate, as Attorney Stevenson would say, to this history and these stories. And so we talk about the stories of Richard Robertson in Mobile, Will Thompson, Richard Robinson, Mose Dossett, James Lewis, and Zachariah Graham. During this time period, we also begin to see a shift in the way that criminalization of black people were happening across the country. And then from that era, we then can only talk about the era of Jim Crow segregation and the civil rights movement through the lens of these prior eras that inform this time period. We oftentimes, don't talk about the fact that there was this massive resistance to black equality during this era. And without talking about that, it's hard for us to acknowledge the amazing legislation that was passed that actually was able to open up new opportunities for black people. The Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act of the 1960s. These were documents, the Brown v. Board. These were moments that were significant for our country's history. But oftentimes we don't talk about that. When we then talk about today's crisis of mass incarceration, we again situate it in this narrative of racial difference, these presumptions of guilt and dangerousness that are assigned to black people. And we talk about the fact that there is still so much inefficiencies in the implementation of the death penalty, but also there is a connection between this history of racial violence and racial terror lynching to mass incarceration today. And states today that we report that have the highest rates of execution, these are states that had the highest rates of racial terror lynching during the time period of 1865 to 1950. There's a direct correlation. And so we, as a society, as an organization, developed our Community Remembrance Project with the intentionality of allowing people to tangibly engage with our work, to learn about this history in broader and more nuanced ways, but also to be challenged and inspired to initiate projects in their own communities that would actually get the larger community to connect with and contextualize, in many ways, the built landscape of their environments that has been shaped by this history. And so in Mobile, we're very honored to be working with the Mobile County Community Remembrance Project and with Mary and Eric and many others in this community. And through our projects, we hope to install markers in this community that contextualize and tell the narrative of the victims of racial violence, and to also talk about so much of the reality of the students' experiences that are here. Black students, white students, so much of their experience is formed by this history. And so what would it mean for us to have symbols and memorialization efforts that talk about this in meaningful ways? And so in 2018, we built our Legacy Museum and National Memorial with that intentionality as well, creating these narrative experiences. And so we're excited to launch this essay contest and to be awarding the winners of this scholarship essay opportunity. Let's see here. So just to give you all a brief little rundown and context, our essay contest was primarily open to 9th to 12th grade students in Mobile County that were attending public high schools. And typically we award at least $5,000 in scholarships. But because we had so many amazing essays, honestly, there were so many, we just couldn't decide. And so we decided to increase the threshold to $8,000 in scholarships that we're happy to award to student winners here today in this community. Students were asked to examine the history of a topic of racial injustice and to discuss its legacy today. The essay should explain the chosen topic using a specific historical event and explore how the injustice persists and imagine solutions for a world free of racial injustice. It's so inspiring to hear a superintendent talk about the fact that this essay contest will be continuing. And we hope that students will continue to engage with this essay contest and that more institutions in this community will galvanize collectively with and alongside the Mobile County Community Remembrance Project and support students in the writing of their essays. So many communities across our country have been profoundly impacted by the legacies of the eras of enslavement, racial terror, lynching, and segregation in ways that continue to influence our social, political, and personal practices and institutions. And I think that we can all agree that the last year of COVID, I think really amplified, I think, that reality for many of us. And so it's just, again, encouraging to see this community, Mobile, committing to ensuring that there is an establishment of truth and a commitment to racial equality that's happening here in this community. We believe, as an organization, that deeper understanding of our nation's history of racial injustice is important to addressing contemporary questions of social justice and equality. And each project helps our nation participate more fully in a sequential process of truth and reconciliation. And so I want to start with giving awards to the students who we recognize as honorable mentions for our essays. And before I begin, I just want to ask, if you're a student that participated in this essay contest, I would like you to please stand up to be recognized. Awesome. You guys can please be seated. And if you are an educator in this community who helped with the essay contest, or you are a member of the coalition who also supported the essay contest, I would like you to also please stand and be recognized. I'm looking at Mary. And also for the parents as well, because it takes a village. Please stand up. And grandparents too. Fantastic. Okay, let's get to the prizes. So for the first prize that I'm gonna be awarding, it is an honorable mention. And this is for Mr. William Starling of Baker High School. He's an 11th grader, and it's for his essay, A Past Forgotten. Is William here? And awesome, thanks so much, Will. And if you would, just stand right at the end. Yeah, right at the end. Yeah, just stand right there, that's perfect. Okay, and the next student that I would like to award an honorable mention as well to is Anaya Thompson. Anaya is from Murphy High School. She is an 11th grader for her essay, Racial Injustice. from Baker High School, I would like to award Kiera Mosley an honorable mention as well for her essay, The Elephant in the Room, the Miseducation of Quality Education. In fifth place for our essay contest, I would like to award Jasmine Rhodes from Baker High School. She's an 11th grader for her essay, We the People. Jasmine? I think she's here with us. In fourth place for their essay, Race and Economics, I would like to award 11th grader Micaiah Beck from Baker High School. And so remember I told you we couldn't decide on winners, so we got a couple ties. In third place for their essay, People of Color versus the Criminal Justice System, I would like to award 11th grader Jada Blair from Baker High School. Jada? Okay. No worries. In third place, I would like to award, again, I'd like to award Latrell Wilder for his essay, The Many Struggles of One Group. And Latrell comes to us from Acel Day and Evening Academy. Latrell? And this is the last third place winner, I promise. So in third place again, I would like to award Fatima Hussein Abdullah from Baker High School, who, for their essay, Arab American Racism Today. Fatima? Awesome. In second place, I would like to award Carrington Jones for their essay, A City Reborn to Stimulate Change. And Carrington comes to us from Sarah Land High School. And in first place, I would like to award Mr. Jaden Clemon, who is a 12th grader from CF Vigor. Thank you. Viger High School. Jaden. So as a component of our essay contest, oftentimes we've seen communities actually allow the first place winner to read their essay aloud for the audience. And so today I am very pleased and fortunate to allow Jaden an opportunity to read his essay aloud for you all as well. Awesome. Cool.
Police brutality. Americans of all races, ages, religious backgrounds, social classes, genders, ethnicities have been subjugated to a form of police brutality. Research shows the people most impacted by this are of African American population. A famous quote by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, Returning hate for hate multiplies hate, adding deeper darkness to a night already devoid of stars. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. These words speak volumes, indicating that two wrongs cannot make a right, and that history is filled with hate. Everyone should be treated as equals, no matter the circumstances, but that is not our reality. The United States Blueprint, the Declaration of Independence's purpose, is to protect the unalienable rights that all Americans receive at birth, yet police brutality continues to threaten the rights of African Americans everywhere. We all have the idea that police brutality is the use of excessive or unnecessary force by police when dealing with civilians. Police brutality has a long and ugly history dating back to the early 1800s. It has become a common topic of great discussion and controversy in recent years due to a sudden increase of racially driven protests, rallies, and demonstrations. The people want to bring to light events that left an impact on United States history. African American people still face these injustices today. They want to have a voice in the effect and the events had on the history of the community. In addition, find ways we can combat the issue to form a future free from racial injustice. One example of police brutality is the 1967 Newark riot, which was 159 race riots that swept cities in the United States. The event that incited the Newark riot happened during the early evening of July 12, 1967, when a black cab driver named John Smith was beaten and arrested by two white police officers for a minor traffic infraction around the Newark Central Ward. The event happened near a large public housing project, and residents took witness and were outraged. As Smith was dragged into the 4th precinct, a crowd gathered outside, frustrated and upset with the lack of details on his condition. Protesters began throwing rocks, breaking police station windows. Bob Carvin, a local, had this to say: "There was a rain of stones, rocks, Molotov cocktails at the precinct." Carvin remembers the flames started flickering down the side of the building, and the police came charging out with nightsticks, shields, riot gear. Days of rioting followed the protests. Stores were looted and some were burned down. This led New Jersey Governor Richard J. Hughes to call in state troopers and the National Guard to try to restore order. This action only escalated the violence and led to further bloodshed, with the deaths of 43 people, including 33 African Americans and 10 whites. The riots caused around $10 million in damages and reduced entire blocks to nothing more than charred ruins, until on Tuesday, July 25th, nearly 2,000 Army paratroopers arrived, ordered there by President Johnson at the request of George Romney, the governor of Michigan. It took another 2 days to restore order, and on July 27th, the rioting ended. Nearly 50 years after the Newark incident, the city still lives in the aftermath. The violent encounters like these can have a profound and lasting effect on the health and trust of neighborhoods and communities. Nearly half of Black Americans have little or no confidence that police officers in their community treat people with different skin colors the same. Another instance of this is the Michael Brown shooting in Ferguson, Missouri, a suburb of St. Louis. It also sparked protests and rioting. On August 9, 2014, Michael Brown and a friend were walking on Confield Drive, a two-lane street in Ferguson, when a police officer drove up and told them to use the sidewalk. After some exchange of words, the white officer confronted the young 18-year-old black male. The situation escalated, and the officer and Brown got into an altercation. The officer later shot and killed unarmed Mr. Brown. Brown's body remained in the street for 4 hours before being removed. People in the neighborhood were outraged at the police, saying that they were mistreating the body. Community immediately started having protest and vigils the same day. The protest took a violent turn on the following Sunday, as protesters began looting businesses in Ferguson. The Ferguson riots were a series of riots and protests. The protests continued through November 2014 after a grand jury ruled that Wilson would not be charged with the shooting and killing of Mr. Brown. One protest turned looting lasted for several hours, leaving a trail of broken glass and burned out storefronts. The police, along with the Missouri National Guard, were called to try and get control of the out-of-hand demonstrators and protesters. More than 80 people were arrested. 61 of these arrests were in Ferguson, with charges ranging from burglary to trespassing. These events have left a scar on the African-American population. Specialists discuss how black people being subjugated to videos of African-Americans being killed by the police is affecting the public's health. According to Penn Today, African-Americans know pain and trauma all too well, from the evils of the Middle Passage to tortures of slavery, lynching, medical practices, and forced sterilizations. Widespread police brutality is their most recent torment. A study by Abigail A. Sewell, an associate professor at Emory University at Atlanta, Georgia, found a link between living in minority communities with a higher use of force by police have a higher risk of diabetes and obesity. The use of force by police is also associated with a lower risk of fair health services. The article, Police Brutality Impacts Latino and African American Lives and Communities by Angelica Delgado, states that one of the main findings was that African American boys who grow up in heavily policed neighborhoods know that law enforcement's attention is frequently focused on them. In addition, it was found that body searches were common in these neighborhoods, and by the time African Americans in their late teens, they have learned how to behave like professional suspects. Constantly witnessing these routine searches eventually erodes community members' trust in the police. There are a few ways African Americans can combat the issue of police brutality. Tracking the problem is one example of the issue. In the past, there was no way to track police killings or police using excessive force until the killing of Michael Brown. Several private and nonprofit groups have begun keeping their own databases. This includes Mapping Police Violence, which is an effort led by data scientist Samuel Signagwe. Thanks to these databases, it is clear that blacks are killed at a disproportionate rate by police officers. Another solution would be demilitarize the police. For decades, police have been gradually gaining more and more equipment from the U.S. military. The government is constantly transferring weapons from the military to civilian law enforcement agencies. These weapons and vehicles are encouraging and increasing the use of violent tactics in even the most basic police work. Everything from executing search warrants to responding to peaceful demonstrations. The 1033 program holds majority of the blame. The 1033 program provides free surplus military gear to departments for the cost of shipping. Since 1996, when the program started, the Pentagon has sent more than $7 billion worth of weapons and equipment to more than 8,000 civilian law enforcement agencies across the U.S. A further course of action could be banning certain uses of excessive force. Use of force, according to the International Association of Chiefs of Police, is the amount of effort required by police to compel compliance by an unwilling subject. That could include everything from a chokehold, mace, taser, or ex-officer Chavin's knee on the back of George Floyd's neck. Campaign Zero would be the best alternative. Campaign Zero suggests departments ban chokeholds and utilize deadly force as a last resort. After efforts of de-escalation or the strategic slowing down of an incident that allows officers more time, distance, and space to peacefully resolve the conflict have failed. In conclusion, though police brutality has a long and ugly history and has become a greater topic of discussion, the people still want to bring to light the events that left an impact on the United States are still prevalent. Whether or not African American people still face these injustices today is not a question that needs to be asked, but a question that needs help answering.
Awesome. Can we get one picture of all the students? Okay, great. And I forgot one important piece as well, your plaques. Ma'am? Oh yeah, so that's information that, we keep pretty confidential for now. But I'm sure you can ask the students too. If you want to.
I forgive it.
Awesome. You guys can be seated. Test it.
To close our event today, I'd like to ask my co-chair of the committee, Gigi Armbrecht, to come and send a few words. Thank you again, everyone, for being here.
I'm so sorry we can't tell y'all how much the kids won, but I think they'll be really pleased. Before I say the formal thank yous and goodbyes, I'd like to call on the superintendents. Mr. Threadgill got a chance to speak. Dr. Milner, would you like to say something?
On behalf of the Saraland City School Board, we'd like to congratulate each and every winner, your families that are here today. What an honor. Also want to thank Elliot and Kiana for that outstanding presentation of what EJI does for our country, not just what here in the state of Alabama, but for our country. If you haven't had a chance to visit, I have trouble calling it a museum because it's so much more powerful than just walking through a museum. But also, and then the lynching memorial, which it's hard to take those two terms and put them together. But when you walk through that, a mind shift for any rational person takes place. And so I urge you to take advantage of that. And I'm also going to call out my second place winner because I'm proud of her as well. All right, so thank you again for including us in this great event. Thank you.
And Dr. Jeremiah Newell with Excel Day and Evening Academy.
Good morning, and thank you so much, EJI and the community and the committee here in Mobile for your support and this wonderful opportunity. The work that EJI does for our world is not just groundbreaking, but critical to our future. And the essay of the young man, the winners, but all the essays are really about continuing a conversation and a dialogue and an urgency that must be done now. And so on behalf of that work, thank you for allowing our school to be a part of it. The E in Excel is about empowerment, and it's about giving voice and power to the interests and needs of young people in a supportive way. And that's what our young people have done through these essays. So I want to certainly shout out one of our finalists, Latrell Wilder. Thank you for representing our school so well. But most importantly, thank you all young people for moving your voice forward in the future and continuing this momentous work.
We gave the students a chance to acknowledge a teacher that was particularly helpful to them during this process. And somewhere, did I leave a paper over there, Carolyn? Yes, that paper. Okay, these teachers were named by one of the winners. Caitlin Campbell, are you here? Please stand. Victoria Everett, is that right? Victoria Everett? No. She also was named. Karen Matthews. I'm not sure, is it Shauna or Shayna? Shayna Nunn at Vital. And Laura Sadler. There you go. Thank you so much for encouraging these students. Their work was amazing. You should be very proud of them, and I know you are. I'd like to thank all of you who came, parents, grandparents, the committee who's here, and the Mobile County Public Schools. Thank you, commissioners, for being here. Now, some of the commissioners have students, winners here. Dr. Crenshaw, you have a winner. I know. Don't tell And Ms. Delahaye McDade, you have a winner too. If you all could stick around long enough to get your picture made with your winner, that would be awesome. Have I left out anything? Oh, yes. Yes, if you would like to read your student's essay, please take a copy. They're up here under a placard that has the student's name on it, so you should be able to find it. And then there are materials on this table right by the door from EJI, so feel free to take copies of those also. And if I haven't forgotten anything else, thank you all again for coming, and congratulations, students. Great work.